Hello everyone, and welcome back to Swords and Slippers. In this week's episode, we're doing another reading like we had done a few videos back. There's actually still quite a few of these stories and pieces of lore that are written over on the Mass Creation Patreon page. And so I decided that I wanted to bring more of them over. They start to connect, actually. There is a chronology to them, and they start to weave a much grander story, and it becomes very interesting when you connect them all together. Now, in this week's episode, we're reminded that fairy tales are not all sunshine and rainbows. It's not all the happy tales that you expect to see when you would go see a good 90s or 80s Disney movie. No. This is definitely not that. A lot of fairy tales are much darker and they don't have happy endings, and well, without further ado, let's enter the charming curse. Sunlight moved slowly over the frost-born mountains. It always took a leisurely pace over the dangerous cliffs, but once it reached the peak, it rushed into a gallop down the mountainside into the valley proper. On this fateful day, the light tripped. The light tumbled clumsily down into the valley of Everland. It flowed past the pixies in the woods just as it flashed past the dwarves in their deep mines. It did not stop until it slipped right into the castle through a window slit and landed upon the head of a newborn child. That drop of sunlight blessed the child with unnatural and irresistible charisma. The child's parents were the good king and queen of Everland. He would eventually be known as Prince Charming, though that was not his given name, for who would grant a child such a silly name? However, as so often happens when fate bestows blessings, it also bestows curses. As night fell, a streak of black tore through the sky and entered the prince's chamber. This bolt of darkness was a fairy who had always longed for a child of her own, and she had become smitten with the small prince. She asked the baby to come with her, speaking the language shared between newborns and fairies. But the prince, in his infant innocence, told her he did not want to go. He wished to stay with his family and share with them many happy days. The fairy screamed, a cry so violent that she burst like a bubble of tar. A sliver of darkness sank into the prince's smile and twisted its way around that drop of light. And so it was, on the day of Prince Charming's birth, that he was blessed and cursed in equal measure. It was also the last day in Everland when there was more light than dark for a very long time. All who met the child would find their days and lives brightened, for when he smiled, the world felt light and sweet. The prince often played with Princess Margaretha, a scion of another great kingdom in the valley. She was a pale, lanky tomboy, all knees and elbows. She was so pale that the prince often called her Snow White. Their parents considered wedding the two when they came of age. It would never come to pass. The prince spent most of his time with the good queen, who had made herself his tutor. As he grew, she became possessive, desperate, terrifying. She would fly into violent rages any time she was denied her son's presence. Desperate for answers, the good king summoned the Frost Matron, a beautiful and powerful enchantress from the frozen north. She was known for one who understood the deeper magics of the world, especially the darker ones. Upon hearing that the Frost Matron would be entering her home, the good queen said she wished to fly like the smile of her beautiful child, and threw herself from the highest tower. The good queen's death was the first, but it would not be the last. It was the Frost Matron who discovered that the prince possessed both a drop of sunlight and a bolt of darkness inside him. Together, they made him charming, but dangerous. Those who knew him were doomed to love him, but the greater that love grew, the more it twisted and dug into the soul like a dagger, until madness was the only outcome. For his own safety, and for that of the rest of the kingdom, the prince was confined to his room. His only visitors were the Frost Matron and, on occasion, his father, the Good King. The Good King, lonely and perhaps naive, grew close to the Frost Matron, and it was not long before they were wed. The Frost Matron, however, was as cold as her name suggested. She made sure the Good King spent a great deal of time with his son. Too much. When he lost himself to the prince's curse, he threw himself from the very same tower as the Good Queen. The prince, realizing that his stepmother had used him to kill his father, confronted her with a dozen guards. The prince and his guards were never seen again. The next day, a dozen ice sculptures stood silently in the castle gardens, and a tapestry of the prince hung in one of the royal guest rooms. A tapestry that was said to be exceptionally lifelike. Some whispered that in the early morning light, if one looked closely enough, it would even shed a tear. So, that was considerably more bleak than the last story that we read. The last one was Snow White and the Seventh Dwarf, and it ended off with the rise, the rise of Snow White and the beginnings of the rebellion. It was hopeful. It was going somewhere. This didn't do that at all. This was just a real downer ending, wasn't it? It didn't go maybe perhaps where we wanted it to go. But I'll tell you what I really liked about it. What was really great was we did have that small connection there with Snow White, so there was that small tie-in there, even though it was quite brief. So it did kind of connect to the previous story a bit. But what this story does really well is it serves to show us what kind of villain we're going to be facing when this game comes out. The Frost Queen and and the other one, the Briar Matrons, they are not enemies to take lightly. These sisters are extremely dangerous. I mean, Prince Charming, as it said at the end there, went to face her with 12 guards, and you'd think that would put him at a pretty significant advantage. Nope, not at all. They were all left frozen to death, and poor Prince Charming was left with a fate, well, quite frankly, worse than death. We're going to see more and more of this as we read more of the stories. We're going to see more examples of just the ruthlessness of the Briar Matrons and the kind of hardships that these characters go through, and it's going to paint what I think will be some very real motivation to bring the Briar Matrons down and to be motivated to take this enemy on. So with all that said, I believe next week's episode will probably be another story reading episode, unless something significant comes along, like perhaps another reason to make a gameplay video, like another Patreon build or something like that. But until then, I continue to look forward to this game. I continue to look forward to playing the full version of this and bringing the Briar Matrons to justice, and maybe getting a few nice ass shots along the way. So, yeah, that will be the end of this video, and I will see you in the next game.